Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving into the world of virtual learning environments. VLEs. We're going to figure out what exactly separates a great online classroom from, well, a really frustrating one. And the answer, it turns out, is all about the user interface design. So let's get into it. You know that feeling, right? If you've ever taken an online course, I'm sure you've been there. That moment of just total confusion, trying to find a file, submit an assignment, or just figure out where on earth you're supposed to click next. It's a universal feeling, and honestly, it's a design problem. Today, we're looking at the core principles that can fix it. So to really understand this, we're going to dig into a really fascinating research paper from 2010 that put 3 popular platforms of the time to the test. First up, on the left, we have Moodle. It's an open source platform, super well known for having a ton of features. And on the right, that's Clariline, a platform that came out of France for managing online courses. And rounding out our lineup, our third challenger is Tutor, another open source VLE, this one from the University of Toronto. Okay, so we have 3 platforms, all built to help people learn online. But the big question the researchers were asking was, which one actually gives the best user experience? And, maybe more importantly, how do you even measure something like that? So here's our game plan for today. First, we're going to break down the problem with these platforms. Then, we'll get into the 3 golden rules of design that the researchers used. After that, it's showtime, the platform showdown, where we'll see how each one measures up. And finally, we'll talk about the big takeaway and why it's still so relevant. All right, let's jump into that framework. The first and maybe the most important rule of good design is all about putting you, the user, in control. A great interface shouldn't feel like some rigid system you have to fight with. It should feel like a tool that you are in command of. Think about it like this. Are you behind the wheel, deciding where to go and when? Or are you just stuck in the back seat, totally along for the ride? The whole goal of good design is to hand the user the keys. You should always feel like you're in the driver's seat of your own experience. So how do you actually do that? Well, the paper breaks it down. It starts with simple stuff, like using familiar icons. We all know what that little triangle means, right? It's about giving users options, like using their mouse or keyboard shortcuts. You need to provide a safety net, like undo and redo. The interface should feel transparent, which is a fancy way of saying you feel like you're working directly with your stuff, not fighting the software. And a huge one, allowing for customization, so people can make the space feel like their own. For a perfect example of this in action, the researchers pointed to Oxford University's website at the time. They loved its super clear navigation and all the personalization options. It's a design that really empowers the user, making them feel confident and totally in command. Okay, on to our second rule, which builds right on that first one. This is all about reducing the user's mental load. And what that really means is that a great interface shouldn't make you work hard just to use it. The learning part should be about, the actual subject, not figuring out the software. The academic term for this is reduce users' memory cognition load, which is a mouthful. But it really boils down to this one simple, powerful idea. Don't make me think. Seriously, every single second a user has to spend just trying to understand the interface is a second they aren't spending learning. And we see this in really practical ways. Simple things like copy and paste help out our short-term memory. Menus are great because they let us recognize an option instead of having to recall a command from memory. Clear visual cues show us where we are and what we can do. Shortcuts speed everything up, and maybe most importantly, just promoting visual clarity, getting rid of all the clutter, lets us focus on what actually matters. And to show what this looks like, the paper held up IBM's website from that era as a fantastic example. Look how clean it is. The layout, the clear organization, the lack of visual junk. It all meant that users didn't have to waste brain power just trying to figure out where to look. And that brings us to our third and final rule. Make the interface consistent. So if the first rule is about control and the second is about making things easy, this one is all about reliability. It's about being predictable. Here's the deal. Users build a little mental map of how a piece of software is supposed to work. Consistency makes sure that map never leads them astray. If you click a save icon, it should always save your work. No surprises. That predictability builds trust, and it makes the learning curve way, way shorter. And this idea of consistency applies to everything. It means keeping users oriented so they don't get lost halfway through a task. It means making sure actions always have the same predictable results. And yeah, it even applies to how things look. Using consistent colors, fonts, and icons creates this feeling of polish and integrity. It just feels right. Okay, so we've got our 3 golden rules: user control, low mental load, and consistency. Now, for the really fun part. It's time to see how our 3 virtual classrooms, Moodle, Clariline, and Tutor, actually did when they were judged by these exact principles. Now, the way they did this is really important. The researchers got a group of 80 people together, a mix of UI designers, teachers, and students, and have them test drive each platform. They were asked to score each one from 0 to 100 based on how well it followed our 3 rules. Let's see what they found. Whoa. Okay. The data here tells a really clear story. Look at Tutor. Insanely high scores across the board, especially for lightening that mental load and being consistent. Moodle did pretty well, especially on mental load, but it kind of stumbled when it came to consistency. And then there's Clariline, which, well, it clearly struggled with its lowest scores in mental load and user control. So, let's go ahead and reveal the final rankings. Coming in 3rd place with a total average score of 60.42 is Clariline. The numbers suggest that while it worked, its interface just didn't give users that strong sense of control, and it took more mental effort to get around compared to the others. And this bar chart really puts it all in perspective, doesn't it? Moodle takes a very respectable 2nd place with a score of 78.39. But you can just see there is a clear winner standing head and shoulders above the rest. And the winner of the UI Showdown is Tutor, with an amazing final score of 90.99. It absolutely crushed it in every single category, proving it was the platform that best empowered its users, was the most intuitive, and gave the most consistent and reliable experience. So Tutor was the champ back then. But you might be wondering, why does a study from over a decade ago still matter today? In a world with way more advanced digital tools? Well, it matters a lot. The paper's conclusion says it all, really. Good design isn't just about making things look pretty. It's about user acceptance and making things easy to use. Because when software is easy to use, it's more efficient. And, bottom line, it's more successful. These principles are totally timeless because, well, human psychology doesn't really change. And that brings me to a final thought for you. Take a look at the apps, the websites, and the software you use every single day, and ask yourself, do they lighten your mental load? Are they consistent? And most importantly, do they put you in the driver's seat? Are you in control? Thanks for watching.